Happy fifth Sunday in Lent, and here we are. Next week is Holy Week and Easter Sunday, so time has just been flying. And tonight is also, and the sun is just going down. I'm doing this on Saturday night, right at sundown, which means that it's the beginning of Passover, which is the um, uh, celebration that Jesus and his disciples were entering into as they were doing the Last Supper. The Last Supper was the Passover meal. Now, some people would say, well, but wait, we're doing Easter next week. If it was Passover, why don't we do it at the same time as Passover? And it was rather complicated, but somewhere along in church history, the dates got separated. And they're close because they're still related to the beginning of spring. And they're still related to the phase of the moon because, as I mentioned before, Easter is, you can tell when Easter is because it's the first Sunday after the first full moon after the first day of spring. So you have to have the first day of spring, which is March 20th or 21st. Then you have to have a full moon. Then the next Sunday after that is Easter Sunday, and that's how we, in the Christian church, figure out when Easter is going to be. And in Judaism, it's figured out, the beginning of Passover is figured out differently, but still by the phase of the moon, but not by necessarily the vernal equinox. It's just by the moon. But there it is. But tonight, as they're celebrating, one of the things that they'll be doing is having the blessing over the wine. And I thought I'd teach you guys this so that, over the bread and the wine as part of that. But these very words over the bread, when he broke the bread, Jesus would have prayed this prayer as he was doing that action. Now you can look up the Seder meal. Used to be that in the coffee aisle, Maxwell House had copies of the Seder. They would actually make copies of the Seder, and the Maxwell House Seder is the book itself was called a Haggadah, but their copy of the Seder was like everybody used it. And I myself have gotten a copy. Of course, it's packed now, so good luck finding it. But it's pretty cool that you could just get it. Now you can look online to do it. So here it is, and it's remember they go left to right here, and I've written it down there, which now that I'm looking at it, it's backwards in mine, which means that the Hebrew will read the other way, so that's something. But listen carefully and you'll get it. But it's Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Hamotzi Lechem Haaretz. I'll say that one more time, and here it is: Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Hamotzi Lechem Haaretz. Wait, I forgot a word there. That's min. Sorry about that. Lechem min haaretz. And that is, blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. And some of you might remember that I've mentioned haaretz is earth, and also means the land. So when Jews would talk about Eretz Israel, they talked about the very earth that God gave to Moses, that gave to the people, and said, "Here's the promised land." So Haaretz has a a deeper meaning than just, a bucket of dirt. It's the blessedness of the earth itself that God tends to. And so that miraculous idea of bread springing from the earth is right in there. And here you see Baruch Atah, and those little things are Adonai, whereas, of course, I've mentioned this time and time again, but in Hebrew, remember, this would spell YHWH, but you never say God's name. So this means Yahweh, but because you never say Yahweh, you put these little marks down here. Those are yods, or what Jesus would have called a jot, not a jot, or a tittle. There's a tittle right there, but there's a jot. And so those two together told you that that's the word that means Yahweh, that we say the Lord because they say the word the Lord, Adonai. So Baruch Atah Adonai, and there's Eloheinu, our God. So the Lord our God, Adonai Eloheinu, Melech HaOlam, King of the earth, Hamotzi Lamech Min Haaretz. And one other little thing about Lamech right there is, or Lechem, sorry, I said Lamech, I meant Lechem. Lechem Min Haaretz. Lechem is, you hear that when in the word Bethlehem, because B-E-T-H, Bet, means house, and Lechem means bread. Bethlehem, house of bread. So bread right there, you see, is Lechem. So now whenever you hear the word Bethlehem, you'll recognize there's bread right in the middle of that, house of bread. So one more time, so that you can say it, and they would, in the Jewish households, they would say this over the Seder meal, but also over their meals as well. So, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu, Melech HaOlam, Hamotzi Lemech Men Haaretz. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. So, and I thought that was, I'd do that now because the sun is setting, and right when the sun was setting, that was the sign that you would begin your, the Seder meal from that, and you would begin by having the youngest person ask the questions, one of which is, why is this night different than all other nights? And one other little interesting tidbit, or at least I thought it was, that if you watch the Cecil B. DeMille 10 Commandments movie, which they often show now, around Easter time, and sometimes even tonight, but it's a long movie if you're watching the, if you've got commercials. But in there, when they're getting ready to leave, and they're sitting in there, and Moses is there, and they're having a meal, and Joshua comes in, and the last curse is starting, and the clouds coming down, and you hear people screaming outside, and you see the little purple cloud, and then he throws the door open and say, look on death if it's not forbidden, and Moses says, no, shut the door. And then one of the kids at the table says, why is this night any different than any other night? Which is exactly what every Jewish person would have recognized as the Seder meal. So Cecil B. DeMille was actually building that into his movie, that was the beginning of the Passover meal. And he recognized that, which is that's pretty cool, that he wanted to build that in to the process. So that was like the first Passover meal, and he was commemorating that. So now whenever you watch that, and you see old Charlton Heston there, and Yvonne DiCarlo, I guess she had left already, but all the other ones, Edward G. Robinson's going to show up in a little while. you see all these, actors, but Cecil B. DeMille was looking at it saying, this was the first Passover meal, and I'm going to let everybody know about it with these questions, which was pretty cool. And, of course, they would have said this prayer as well as they went. So there's your Hebrew lesson. But the Bible lesson is from Isaiah. And you remember, once again, that we've been talking about the different covenants, agreements that God has made with his people on this journey of Lent as we look back at the agreements that God has made and how they looked forward to the time when God was going to make the new commandment with his people. And here we are, Isaiah 7, starting verse 10. Once again, the Lord God spoke to King Ahaz. This time he said, "Ask me for proof that my promise will come true. As for anything to happen deep in the world or dead, deep in the world of the dead," which some of your translations might call Sheol, or high in the heavens above. "No, Lord," Ahaz answered, "I won't test you." Then Isaiah said, "Listen, every one of you in the royal family of David, you have already tried my patience. Now you are trying God's patience by refusing to ask for proof. But the Lord will give you proof. A virgin is pregnant. She will have a son and will name him Emmanuel." God with us. And there it was. Isaiah was saying, here's the time is coming that God being with us will be here. God will come, manifest who he really is in the world, and that will make it available for you and me to have God within our hearts, because we will have access to God in the flesh, God with us, in a way that we didn't have before, which is pretty incredible. That Isaiah is making this. Now, some historians have wondered whether at the time there was actually somebody that was pregnant and named the child God is with us. But we recognize that Isaiah was also speaking of the far future, because remember, that's the prophecies that they did were often double-edged. They were social commentary about what was happening now, and they were prophetic in looking forward to what God was going to be doing for the people in the far future. And Isaiah recognized that this is what God was doing in the world. God was physically manifesting himself in as the Son, and he was going to be with us. And as far as the covenants that God made with his people, remember, because that's sort of the thread that we've been following, the agreements that he's been making, finally, here it is, the agreement that says, I'm coming to be with you, to have a direct relationship with you. Remember that the agreements that God had made were always based on God's relationship with his people. They were always based on the reality of God's love and reaching out to have a relationship with us. That was always the basis of it. And we always had a hard time bridging that gap and figuring out, well, how do we have a relationship with God. We don't know anything, and we don't. We're pretty hard that way. And God said, well, I'm going to solve this problem once and for all, and here's what's going to happen. I'm going to be with you. And Isaiah is pointing to that very fact. So that, from the progression of seeing it up in the sky to seeing it on, in the form of children as pointing to what would happen in the future, to the prophecy of that one day it will be written on our hearts, to now recognizing that not only is God writing his law on our hearts, but he's coming in person to help us live in that relationship. And to be able to be with God in that way. And now next week we're going to see the fruition of that, which is pretty cool. It's pretty neat that God is working in that way for us, which is amazing. And that we can benefit from that ourselves, but we can also be the agents of that in helping other people to know it. So God came to be with us so that we could live as members of the kingdom to help others recognize it too and be there for them, which is, that's what God intended, for us to be able to be citizens of the kingdom, and as such to invite others to be there too. So there it is. You notice that change in venue here. This is my new backyard here in Castleberry, and you see the little flowers that are happening back there. That's why I chose this spot, and luckily there aren't too many bugs. I just saw a bat fly by a little while ago, so they're on it. And I love you guys, and happy 5th Sunday in Lent, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.